Joining me right now, the Upside of Inequality author, Ed Conard, along with Kingsview Asset Management CIO, Scott Martin. Good to see you guys. All right, Ed, you know, you live in New York or New Jersey?
I live in New York.
You live in New York. Okay, so this probably, I'm guessing, is not going to be great for you, and it's not going to be great for any high-income earners or even middle-income earners in New York, because it means they're still going to have to pay their city tax, their state tax, and their federal tax. A bigger tax bill.
Yes.
But you still like the idea of it?
I think, yes. I think all things considered, it's good for America. Why should a taxpayer in New York pay less to the federal government than a taxpayer in Ohio? That, I think, doesn't make any sense. And even though it's true that New York subsidizes the rest of the country, we pay more taxes than we receive in tax benefits. I think it goes to a question of who has the right to tax rich taxpayers, for example. Does the state of New York get that right, or do the rest of Americans get that right?
You know, like if the federal government says your tax rate's 35%,
then it's 35%.
Then it would be 35%. And you know what? If New York wants to tack on an extra 9% for the state of New York and another 4% for the city of New York, well, as Warren Buffett likes to say, when the tide goes out, you can see who's swimming naked. Because Scott Martin, everybody will figure out pretty fast which are the better states to live in for tax purposes.
That's fair to say, Trish. I do like to swim, but only with my trunks on. Let's just put that out there. But I disagree with Ed, though, at least when the lights are on, at least when the sun's up. You know, I disagree with Ed, though, Trish. You know, the problem is with his example with the Ohio people is the people in Ohio do pay less than, say, the folks in New York or New Jersey or California or, hello, Illinois. And that's the other issue I have with some of these deductions.
They don't from a percentage basis, though. You can say, okay, people in Ohio aren't making as much money. Well, you know, I'm sorry, you're not making as much in Ohio, but guess what? You still have to pay whatever percentage to the federal government. How is it that in New York we can say, oh, because you're making more, we can divvy it up, and you don't have to pay 35% to the federal government, Scott?
I agree. And also, though, Trish, look at some of the states we're talking about. Those are also some of the states that have the worst credit ratings in the United States. They have the worst state deficit budgets. I mean, those are states that have taken more from their taxpayers.
Tell me, but wait, I thought you just said you disagreed. You didn't think it was fair that, you know, people
Well,
in
it
New
is,
York...
but I'm saying what's happening, too, is it just goes to show you that at the local and state level, the states are abusing their taxpayers. And so when you look at the budget issues with respect to Illinois alone, they're raising taxes locally, Trish, because they can't even make their state budget projections. Okay. So the reality is, when it comes to what the federal government's doing with cutting the tax rates on the high end, that's a good move.
Okay, so I get what you're saying now. Essentially, states need to be smarter about their tax policy and not be so burdensome to their taxpayers. Ed, I mean,
yes.
I think that, you know, you look at a place like Connecticut, right? Perfect example. GE moved.
Yes.
They moved to Massachusetts, their headquarters, because you know what? Connecticut jacked up the tax rates. I mean, you just can't do that, or there will be consequences.
Yeah, so I don't like the idea of increasing the taxes on the most successful Americans. This is what this does, because a lot of them live in New York and California, places like that. But it's a mistake to subsidize state spending so that these states like New York and California, which spend an enormous amount of money, that gets subsidized by the federal government, get encouraged to spend more. Because if you don't spend more, you get basically taxed by the other states.
It's honestly bizarre that anyone ever agreed to this in the first place.
And so it's bad economic policy.
I mean, if you pay federal taxes, you should pay federal taxes. You pay state taxes, you should pay state taxes. The idea that you somehow get to write off some of your federal tax bill because your state happens to not be able to manage its money well, it just encourages that state, Scott, to be irresponsible with what it does with its money because it just keeps coming in.
It does. And it costs the state business in the end. I mean, you guys mentioned GE there. I mean, Illinois is starting to lose businesses to Wisconsin. I mean, look at the Foxconn deal. You think it's any coincidence that they're about 30 miles north of the border in Wisconsin versus in Illinois with the deal that got done there? No, it's because companies don't want to come to those states that are high burdensome, as you said, Trish. The problem is, though, is that's not everybody's case, right? Not everybody is a GE or a Foxconn that can choose where they want to operate. I'm a small business owner. I'm feeling the oppression of the state of Illinois. I can move my business. I've thought about it. There's a lot of folks I work with who can't, so they're unfortunately stuck in these states where the tax rates are oppressively high.
Yeah, well, States need to do a better job. The federal government needs to do a better job. You've heard me say this before. I grew up in a very small place in the small state of New Hampshire where there was no state income tax and there was no sales tax because the motto there was whatever you give government, whatever government has, government will spend. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you took the tax pledge if you were going to run for governor. And
God bless
you promised not to raise taxes. And it's true. What government has, government spends. So let's keep them on a short leash.